Good evening, everyone. I think you have been rushing the yesterday and the day before and today, so you have just 2 hours more for rushing. That's all. I'm going to run for about 2 hours and then you will be freed. What about your mobiles? Are they on? Off? Because I made some money the day before, as you know, won 10 pounds. So I have it here. I'll put it on the website anyway, don't worry, just stay. Okay, now we are in the closing or the pre-closing session, which is the reporting session. As happened, all of us couldn't attend all the 3 sub-themes, the A, B, and C. So today we will hear from each rapporteur will report on one of the 3 sub-themes. The first theme was biomedical sciences and engineering stream, and we will hear from Dr. Rafiq Nakhla. He is a group HR manager at AMP Group in United Arab Emirates. So please join me to welcome Dr. Rafiq.
Good evening. It's good to be here again on the 7th occasion of the BioVision Alexandria. I have been doing this job for the past 7 sessions. So let's start. So we heard a lot about big data, and I consider myself today a survivor of big data. Why? Because in 3 days we had to attend 22 presentations under 7 headings, process them, and present them. So what were the sessions? The sessions were classified under several headings, which made it very difficult for us, very tough. So it started from sequence to knowledge, the future of genomics, system biology and precision medicine, advances in biomedical science, living in the post-antibiotic world, the microbiome, a new way of understanding our world, translation medicine, and finally we had 2 sessions on robotics and biorobotics. So ever since the human genome was deciphered, we have seen this graph appear in a lot of presentation, which is the dramatic reduction in the cost of sequencing. And what has this dramatic reduction in the cost of sequencing has done? It has popularized the sequencing and opened a wide window for applying it to several things. With the appearance of metagenomics, so instead of depending on culture, you go and take a sample and just analyze and sequence the genome that exists within this sample. Still, with that knowledge, we are not clear about what different roles gene can play and what interactions still exist between the different genes together, and how a gene alone can do a certain reaction in the presence of another gene, it can do another job. So we are still in the earlyhood of this technology, and this has led to what we call the big data. The fact that a lot of organisms are being sequenced have created a large database of sequences that needs to be further analyzed and explored. So, the genome has opened the way for metagenomics. We depended earlier in microbiology on cultures. Now we can select a sample from anywhere. We have seen metagenomics applied to mining, taking samples from mines. We have seen metagenomics applied to waste taken from airplanes. We have seen metagenomics taking samples from the sea and from the oceans, trying to identify genomes that exist within these samples that normally are difficult to harvest in laboratory cultures. So the diversity we know has grown tremendously. And we have moved from phenotype description of microorganisms to genotype. What we consider is that the genome today has created the iceberg effect. What we used to know is just the tip of the iceberg With the sequencing, and with the cost of the sequencing being reduced, we are going now into the depth of the iceberg, discovering more and more and more organisms that earlier on we didn't know about. Having said that, we move to system biology, which represents a shift in the paradigm of medicine from being reactive, reacting to the symptoms that appear with the patient, to being proactive, trying to prevent these symptoms and promote a very good health. The main focus is prevention through monitoring of the patient, which will use available technologies like mobile phones and mobile apps, as well as genome sequencing to identify any irregularities in the genome or a predisposing gene for a particular disease. We have just said that the genome sequence have created a data explosion, and this is the real challenge ahead. These raw data needs to be further processed and need to be further understood. Looking at our DNA, it was presented to us that the DNA undergoes spontaneous lesion within the cell. But luckily, and fortunately for us, the cells have a spontaneous mechanism for repairing these lesions, that if are not repaired, they result in a mutation, and the mutation will result in a cell either to die or transform to a cancer cell. However, another good thing that only 1 in 1,000 mutation result in a permanent mutation that remain within the body. And the rest will be eliminated with remarkable efficiency. With these findings in mind, one way of treating cancer or preventing cancer would be to try to find within the genetic mutations pathways that the cell will use to survive and to divide, and to try to block these pathways, which will lead to some sort of death of the cells and elimination. Another area that was revisited during the BioVision 2016 is stem cell, and stem cell still presents the hope, especially with the possibility of transforming a regular somatic cell into a stem cell by resetting it, which earned the scientist that did it a Nobel Prize. However, there are some limitations of stem cells, that some pluripotent cells are immunogenic. Now, we now need to treat stem cells in the same way as blood, so we need to have stem cell banks so that it can respond very quickly to the requirement of emergency cases. Another thing that was presented to us, that growing single-layer stem cells is less effective than growing it in a spheroid thing. We move to antibiotics and the era post-antibiotic, and we are all aware about the resistance developing to antibiotics. So we have a shortening of the time of resistance, which is the time from the first prescription to the first report of resistance. One of the mechanisms of this resistance being developed is the bacteria itself, blocking its membrane to the access of the antibiotic in the intracellular space, so reducing the amount of antibiotic that exists inside it to a sublethal dose. So one of the approaches that should be looked at to improve the resistance is something that will play on the membrane resistance, the same way a beta-lactamase inhibitor was added to beta-lactam antibiotics, preventing the destruction by the beta-lactamase of the antibiotic. We move to the genetic impact on disease severity, and there were some evidence in animal models relating the existence of certain genes to the severe expression of the disease, while there were other genes present in the genome that presented it themselves as a protection factor. So again, there is a correlation between a genetic makeup and the response to the disease. We revisited again the phage as a possible substitute to antibiotics. They were discovered prior to antibiotics. They are abundant in the nature. For every bacteria, you have its own bacteriophage that exists. However, still they are poorly studied. Very little data is available on their dynamics, and they are very difficult to identify and isolate so far. However, big pharma is interested, and I think it is an area of genetic engineering that would be approached. We move to another ohm that was introduced to us, the microbiome, which is the new terminology for the bacterial flora that lives on humans. So our body is formed of almost 10 to the power 13 cells, and it hosts around 10 to the power 14 bacteria. So in the term that we're using in the presentation, we are surrounded by a cloud of genomes of bacteria and viruses. And the weight of these bacteria and viruses was estimated to be around 1 to 2 kilograms. So a first strategy to lose weight is to lose the bacteria. Again, the relation between phenotype and genotype is not yet very clear, and a lot has to be done to establish this relation. One of the things that was trying to establish microbiome is by the use of metagenomics. We were introduced to a study done in Copenhagen, extracting samples from the waste tanks of airplanes coming into Copenhagen from various destinations, and trying to analyze the content of the genomes, trying to identify what type of infection exists, as air travel is becoming the main route of transmission of diseases. We have seen it when SARS exploded, that there were very strong, strict measures taken at airports to prevent the propagation of the disease across through airplanes. With the data explosion, we need to have, as one of the speakers have highlighted, three things: to write better algorithms for handling the data, to depend more on artificial intelligence, and to have bigger dedicated computer power, which would be able to store and analyze the information. We moved on to translational medicine. And in translational medicine, what we are witnessing today, that we have a long time to market. From discovery to market, it's a long time. Associated with a low success rate, so a number was offered to us that from 101 discoveries, 5 get approved, 1 gets to the market. So the need for a lower bench to bedside time requires a collaborative effort from both the clinicians and the researchers so that they can come close together and think of a solution. As was the case presented, the case of the LDL resisting statins. It was discovered that there is a protein that binds to the LDL that prevents the work of the statins, and this can be resolved by the use of a monoclonal antibody to attack this protein and resolve the matter. Functional genomics is a new era where you have to establish the genes, RNA, protein relations, where you have again where we are trying again to establish the genotype-phenotype relation, which is not always a straightforward matter because of several factors, gene interaction and environmental interaction. However, the good thing is when you find a genotype that is positive, susceptible to a disease, while it is a phenotype negative, it can help you to predict the disease, prevent it, and take preventive measures. The last issue that were addressed is robotics and biorobotics, which is progressing exponentially, where engineering is trying to mimic biology, getting the models from insects, birds, human beings. The robotics are classified based on their distance from humans to distance, like robots' robotic arms, in close contact like the exoskeletons, and within humans like the deep nervous stimulator. We have seen a video that was very impressive about the impact of deep nervous stimulation on a Parkinson's disease, how this electrical charge can improve the quality of life of a Parkinson's person. So the robots, as were introduced, can become a third party in the relation between the caregiver and the patient, improving the human-human interaction, acting as a mediator, and especially when we talk about what is a shame-loaded disease like Parkinson's disease. They can be used also as augmentation of human capabilities like exoskeletons, biorobotics to reverse deafness, to reverse blindness, to improve Parkinson's disease, and some of the applications that can be come is remote surgery. And that was the end of my reporting. Thank you very much.
Our second reporter, we report on the second theme, which was the B theme, food, nutrition, and well-being second stream. And we'll hear from Mrs. Ola Al-Ghazawi. She is a senior communications officer at Zuwail University of Science and Technology in Cairo. Please join me to welcome Mrs. Ola.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to participate in BioVision 2016. I'm going to report about food, nutrition, and well-being sessions. First of all, I would like to talk about feeding billions. Food security has been always a challenge to the human race. With a continuous increase in the population, we now reach 7.4 billion people, with around 1 billion left hungry. The population will continue to increase to reach 11.2 billion people by 2100, with a crucial challenge not only to produce more food, but how to do it with less land, less water, less energy, and less use of chemicals. All of this, along with the dreadful impact of climate change on food production through the continuous increase of temperature, sea level rise, and water scarcity, in addition to losing fertile land to desertification, urbanization, and salination. In our pursuit of achieving food security, we have to believe that food security won't be solved by just increasing production, but also by improving the production process, facilitate access to food, establishing technology policies and frameworks. To achieve food security, we have to discover the problem, find innovative solutions through novel approaches and the use of cutting-edge technologies, and do not forget to communicate all of this to the policymaker and people. Also, involving farmers from the beginning will make it easy to convince them to apply these technologies to their fields and farms. So how we can feed the growing population? It's simple, by increasing yield, livestock, and fisheries. But the key is to do so without polluting our environment. One of the discussed novel approaches was to replace the use of nitrogen fertilizers, synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, that pollute our land, water, atmosphere, and contribute to climate change by using bacteria species that can fix nitrogen instead of the fertilizers. Also, using fertigation techniques for land water efficiency, self-contained modern greenhouses, sustainable aquaponics, gene editing, genetically modified crops. The enhancement of crop plant resistance to protect itself against its predator, especially as by time insects become more and more resistant to pesticides. It can be done by modifying the genes of the plant to produce toxins against their predators, change its morphology, color, or smell. We can also use genetic modifications to improve the livestock health, which is a key to increasing the production of meat and milk. We can use genetically improved livestock for more permanent solution to disease. Think of chicken that's resistant to avian flu, or pigs resistant to major infections. Genetically improved crops or livestock are a strong answer to feeding billions, but with the lack of political will to use these technologies. And here I would like to remember Dr. Ismail Sirajuddin's words that we don't have the luxury anymore to talk about not adopting new technologies. We have to be careful and provide comparative analysis to weigh the risk versus benefits. To apply these new technologies to our communities, we need strategies, strong strategies should be set, and best practices should be followed and communicated to farmers. A good model has been shown through Egypt's strategy for sustainable agriculture that aims to the sustainable use for natural agricultural resources, the improvement of agriculture productivity for land and water through modernizing the agriculture and irrigation techniques, enabling the agriculture investment environment, and linking farmers to markets to improve the livelihood of the rural population. One of the important keys to sustainable agriculture is by encouraging investment in agriculture sector through showcase of successful projects. Just like Dr. Mahmoud Solhi was telling us about one of a CARDA project, the return of investment was tenfold of the original fund. Communicating such data to investors will encourage them to do more. Providing food security burden lies also on the shoulders of NGOs with small acts but huge impacts, just like adopting hydroponic farming that needs less water, less area to grow food, and by which we can introduce cooperative work, sustainable community development using simple technologies can be used by people. And from guaranteeing food security for many generations to come to enhancing the future of education, research, and bioethics. All our speakers agree that it's pivotal to build a new generation of scientists capable of solving the society problem in analytical yet ethical ways. Panelists discussed how science and new technologies to be subjected to human conscious decisions and society needed. Building a strong ethics base in the new generation since the early school years is important. Also providing the basic human rights, such like health, safety, education, and food, is pivotal to follow ethics and develop sense of responsibility towards our communities. Local communities, government, and the private sector should cooperate in order to provide building capacity, training, proper education, and create environment encouraging innovation and creation within a set of frameworks and regulation, of course. And with a proper research and novel technologies, new innovation avenues open, making access to healthcare and welfare much easier. Nowadays, you can have your personal trainer and diet professional in your pocket, mentoring your activity, recommending activity and dietary plans tailored specifically for you, depending on your personal profile and monitoring your daily activities and nutrition consumption. Not only that, but you might not need to go to the doctor and wait in line to get checked by physicians. With a continuous increase in investment in the business of digital health during the past decades, investors are after a quick and profitable investments. For example, developing a health or exercise application takes from 9 to 27 months in comparison to pharmaceutical research to develop a drug that takes up to 17 years. Another very interesting area our panelists as speakers discussed was modern biotechnology. The use of biotechnology helped the humankind to promote research in agriculture and the use of it to make our world a better place. Looking into successful models, using biotechnology gives an example to how we can benefit from these technology. An initiative from a Latin group, Latin America, they came together to share information and big data about new technologies, starting building capacity programs, raising awareness among farmers about best practices. And from a success story of Latin America to South Asia, where genetically modified eggplants of four species of them have been adopted to decrease the use of pesticide that was threatening the health of the locals and increasing yield. Science has showed us the way. All we need now is the political will to get things going. Thank you.
Now for the third stream, which was the C stream, current practices and future insights. This will be done by Muhammad Yahya. He is executive editor, Nature Middle East, Nature Publishing Group in Cairo. Please join me in welcoming Muhammad Yahya.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us over the past exciting 3 days. And I will quickly take you through the summary of the third track that we had during BioVision 2016. So before the track started properly, we had a roundtable discussion on the first day with some stellar speakers who discussed how science, technology, innovation, and research can affect our society and how they will affect our future as well, and how to prepare young people and young scientists in particular for that future, which is a world that will be vastly different from the one we live in today. There are several interesting themes that came out from this talk, but the ones that I think resonated the most throughout the following 3 days are about how connected our world will be and how that will enable us to tackle problems in a different way, and how pivotal educating our children to think in a new way that will help them tackle the problems of their world will be. So to go ahead straight into the tracks, I will start with the first topic that took quite a bit of time, which is technology transfer and the future. So we had a handful of speakers, wonderful speakers from around the world, who all offered a look at the state of technology transfer from different regions, mostly in the developing world. And some of the summaries is that African countries continue to lag behind the rest of the world when it comes to technology transfer. Egypt, right here where we are right now, is in dire need of modern technologies, especially for agriculture with the water scarcity that the country is facing. In Sri Lanka, a long civil war has hindered the potential of the country for many years compared to its neighbors. And India has particularly fared better than most countries, and technology transfer and intellectual property support may have been one of the reasons behind that. So technology transfer has transformed nations. Look at South Korea, for example. Its economy has grown exponentially over the past 10 years. However, Africa had changed very little during that same period of time. There are so many technologies, from renewable energy to modern agriculture, that could potentially change the landscape for the continent, but the systems and the people need to be ready to absorb these technologies. Intellectual property issues are here to stay. That's a fact of our life, and they play an important role in innovation as well. Developed countries like India have been able to capitalize on that and benefit from them. And other developing nations can look to that example and learn from what happened in India in particular. IP will strongly impact the sustainable development goals, such as food security and development and eradication of disease, for example. And there needs to be a reward system for inventors and an enabling environment for the private sector innovators and investors as well. Once researchers realize that the value they gain from IPs, they will have more incentive to innovate, which will reflect on both the public and the private sectors. On the other side, countries will need to invest in technological competence from human resources and finding smart ways to keep their smart young people in the country and reduce brain drain to building the proper infrastructure that can support the ambition of these young people eager to innovate. Moving on from technology transfer, we had quite a bit of discussion, and our world exists in harmony, and one change can have an effect far-reaching. And that's why researchers don't look at isolated systems much anymore. And thus was born the water, energy, food nexus, which you can see up on the screen right now. The three are interdependent and strongly linked. So we use water to grow our food, but we also use water to cool our nuclear reactors, and we use it to produce hydroelectricity. And some people use the food that we grew actually as fuel, as in biofuel now, and energy is used for the desalination of water to produce potable water, and so goes the cycle. And we need new technologies that can help us affect the nexus. One example given during one of the sessions and discussed was, for example, moving from reverse osmosis, which can be very energy intensive, to forward osmosis, which uses up much less energy but would produce water that is suitable for agriculture. Another example given is the work being done between Heliopolis University and Cairo University here in Egypt in the Trinex project, which is trying to look at innovative ways to tackle all the problems that the country faces within these sectors, either energy or water or food, in a more holistic way instead of as isolated problems. By looking at them as one block, they're able to, for example, use solar energy and saline water in agriculture and aquaculture. And this photo was taken about 30 or 45 minutes ago, and this is from the nanotechnology session. And look at that, that's amazing. That room was completely packed. There wasn't a place to even walk through the room. It just, now the nano world sparks interest, and people get excited about it, and especially young people. It was so amazing to see all those young people, up to a person who's in their primary years in school, in that room asking questions about nanotechnology. It was inspiring. And people just had so many questions, from graphene to how nanotechnology will affect their future and change their future. And that fascination is, I think, well placed, because as these new technologies continue to penetrate our world, nanomaterials are now everywhere. They're in the devices that we use. They're in your mobile phones. They're being used in various industries, from textile to agriculture to energy generation. And scientists are able to manipulate these devices at an unprecedented level. And every time they go smaller, new properties come up as they near the quantum world, where the laws of physics that we are used to begin to disappear, and others begin to take their place, and they're tapping into that and into the potential of these new technologies. And for example, in Egypt here, researchers have started to use rice husks, which were in the past burned and caused terrible pollution, to produce nanocellulose and nanosilica, which is being used in industry, in textile industry, for example. And they're using the technologies that we have now to manipulate different scenarios. And one other example that I particularly found exciting was how once you cross a certain level, a certain size, you can do different things. You can take completely different angles and look at things from a completely different view. But then at the same time, as my favorite superhero used to say, with great power comes great responsibility. And scientists are quite aware that while tapping into this exciting new world, they also need to be aware of the hazards and risks that nanotechnology can hold. For example, carbon tubes have benefited the industry by being extremely stable, but these stable molecules can become a risk when in a biological system. Nanoparticles are incredibly tiny. They're billionth of a meter, and they tend to agglomerate, and their size is changes. So when you're looking at nanomaterial and nanoparticles, it's important to look at their change sizes, not the original sizes that we think of them. It's important to look at their electric charges, their shapes, their surface chemistry, and their surface areas, and study all that. And there was a question raised on whether we have enough knowledge about a lot of the products that we find in our homes and that are affecting our lives right now. And beside this research on that level, we also need to look at macro systems and look how these particles are affecting water systems, for example, and rivers and agriculture lands. So we can continue to address any toxic issues that arise. It's not that we should not be using them, but we should be aware when we're using them. And it's important to produce models rather than just depend on monitoring, because the models can give meaning to the models that we produce. Now to switch to the final part of the presentation, and that was the science of sustainability. And sustainability took up quite a bit of time in the track. There was quite a few really interesting sessions, and I'll just break them up into 3 quick sections. And the first of them was water sustainability. And in the future, water will continue to be here, but we may not have the same amount of water per person that we have today. And depending on where we are in the world, particular. So for example, if you live in this particular region of the world, we're already below the poverty line of water, and the world and climate change is changing the picture vastly, with floods and droughts taking place increasingly. And agriculture still remains the biggest user of water. It takes up 80% of our water use, but the second one is energy now. And we use energy for water. We can't have water without energy as well. So we need that we continually need to invest in energy, and we continue need to have more energy. And that takes us back to the nexus cycle again. And we can make a large difference on water sustainability by reducing or removing the water needed in energy production and agriculture. Water is a field in which the user pattern determines whether we will have a sustainable water future or not. And we need to increase the water energy efficiency if we want to have enough water for the future. A lot of the water that we use in agriculture, it just goes into flood fields, which is not basically the best use of that water, but I will talk about that in a little bit more. Water reuse in urban settings as well is one option that is becoming increasingly important to look into if we are to have water well into our future. The other thing we also talked about is energy sustainability, and while wind is common in the desert, it also decreases drastically in the winter compared to the summer, so it's not a very reliable source of power. And it's the same when it comes to photovoltaic solar cells, for example, where the peak that we always talk about is 25%, but we can only hit that peak during the noon hours. And during the nightfall, there's no sun, there's no energy being produced. So if you turn to, so we need to have a more diverse, more holistic approach where we can have concentrated solar thermal powers that can complement wind power and PV to give stable energy on demand. And that's one thing that would be important to look at in the future. Finally, when it comes to agriculture sustainability, the human population is growing, and it's growing quite fast. And it takes 15,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of meat. So that just gives an idea of how intense it can be. So meat consumption reduction is one way to start looking at reducing water footprint. But more people are demanding meat. That's the truth of where we are right now. And Egypt in particular has several challenges when it comes to agriculture. There's very little land for agriculture per capita. There's water scarcity, which we expect to increase, and the Delta region is in risk of salination due to rising seawater levels. And there are other problems, such as soil erosion. And Agriculture, it touches on everything in life. The human's civilization was built on agriculture, so it touches on health, on tradition, on soil quality, on education, on gender issues. It's so ingrained into our lives. It continues to employ nearly half of the people in the world today, so it impacts the livelihood of billions of people around the world. And studies conducted right here in Egypt, in Heliopolis University, looked at the coast of agriculture and all the hidden costs associated with agriculture along the lines we just discussed, such as education and health. And the researchers are fairly sure and stress that there is no doubt that the sustainable organic agriculture is better for health, the environment, and society, but it is also a cheaper option compared to commercial agriculture, when talking about all the damaging costs, when you take all the damaging costs of conventional agriculture into account. New technologies can be utilized for sustainability, and these need technology transfer. And one example is a project between ICARDA and the Agriculture Research Center in Egypt, where they've educated farmers and worked closely together with them to change to mechanized raised beds, and that has yielded incredible benefits to farmers and the environment as well. So these has led to a reduction of farming costs by 25%, which obviously the farmers love and are very happy about, but it also reduced water use by 20 to 25% and increased yield up to 30% as well. Finally, with the human race producing more science and science publications than any time in our history in the past, it becomes important to think how we connect to each other and how we can build on all this knowledge as we grow into the future. And this really is what the Bibliotheca Alexandrina is doing. And I don't know if you remember a world before the internet. I personally don't, and frankly, it's hard to imagine how the science landscape looked before the internet. The internet has been the most powerful tool since the discovery of print technology to connect humans and allow us to share knowledge, expertise, and ideas. And the Bibliotheca Alexandrina aims to become the central focal point for science across Africa, to enable scientists across the continent and, in fact, around the world to connect using the internet and free scientific material that's available to them all through networks that the library has created, such as the Science Supercourse. And the Science Supercourse, one example of one of those networks, today has over 2 million hits per month. That's the number of people who are going there for information. And the library has also created the research methods of the Library of Alexandria, which has become a powerful platform now, and it reaches hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are accessing this huge amount of knowledge, where they can actually pose their questions to people and ask questions and learn about methods, how to conduct research methods, and that's one of the problems that a lot of young researchers in the developing world face. While this is part of the education in Western countries, it's not here, and it can enable these young scientists to find better training, interact with well-established scientists, and defy the limitations of geography and allow the free sharing of knowledge. It's also quite interesting that the RMLAs are offered in Arabic. I find that quite relevant because while science education in Egypt is, and in most of the Arab world, let's say, is in English, but conveying ideas works in your native language more than in a foreign language, such as a French scientist, they speak French, and German scientists, they speak German. Arab scientists would like to be able to speak in Arabic as well. Finally, I have no idea why, just go back to my last slide. I would just like to thank you all for joining us over the past exciting 3 days. And I found the third track of BioVision 2016 was quite an exciting one. It's like a looking glass at the future. And it showed us a glimpse of things to come and how we as humans can come together to adopt the ideas of sustainability and cooperation to leave behind a better world for our children and our children's children. And I thank you for your time, and I leave you with this quote from Louis Pasteur. Science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity and is the torch which illuminates the world. Thank you very much.
This is where the three themes or streams for the BioVision 2016. But before this conference, we had a very small conference under the, maybe you have heard about it, which is To Us BioVision Next Conference. This is organized back-to-back with BioVision Alexandria for young scientists coming from developing countries. And this is supported by To Us and the library too. The theme of that conference was research, ethics, and social responsibility. It was attended by about 40 young scientists coming from more than 30 developing countries. We will hear the report about this from Baha El-Gindi. He's assistant professor, chemistry department, Banha University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Baha.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Dr. Faham, for the introduction. Of course, I can't start without thanking all the great people behind this work, including Dr. Sirajuddin, Dr. Faham, Ms. Marwa, Ms. Natalie, Ms. Isra again. I'm not repeating myself, but we have so many Isras here in the library, and all the wonderful volunteers who are making this event possible. So I'm going to report about the TUAS BioVision Alexandria Next 2016. TUAS BioVision Alexandria is an initiative that was launched by Bibliotheca Alexandrina in 2008, where the library, in collaboration with TUAS, invited like 100 young scientists from different developing countries to come here to the library together to discuss some very pressing issues in their career, in their research. And the habit started from there. In 2012, there was 90 participants. In 2010, there was 100 participants again in the year 2016. This is the fourth time with 44 participants. 5 of them couldn't make it for different reasons, but we have like 39 participants from all different offices of TUAS, the 5 different regional offices. The theme for this year was about the research, ethics, and social responsibility. So the researchers had to identify the responsibilities to overcome obstacles in developing countries using quality control and high standard research. The event was held 2 days before BioVision Alexandria. The participants had the opportunity to share their views regarding the status of their research in their countries. They were able to discuss different problems regarding marketing of ideas, tools of efficient patent searches, and intellectual property rights. We had participants from 21 countries. This picture shows all the great participants we were pleased to have here in the library this year. We had 11 speakers from different disciplines, from different countries again. And this was the opening session where you get the flavor of the Library of Alexandria. You can't start any session without performing the morning exercise, where Dr. Faham always tried to free us from the devil in our pockets. So this is the sign that the conference started. We had an introductory session by His Excellency Professor Mohammed Hamdan, the former Minister of Education in Jordan and the TUAS Vice President. He introduced to the young researchers what is the vision and mission of TUAS, what the role TUAS was playing during the last more than 30 years when it was established by the renowned physicist Professor Abdus Salam, the Nobel Laureate from Pakistan. He discussed the issues regarding TUAS, Arwa, and the problems it's facing and the help it's providing to all young scientists. The first part of the conference discussing research ethics and scientific integrity started with an interactive session about responsible authorship, which is very important to introduce to scientists early on in their careers. Professor Shinawi from Ain Shams University Faculty of Medicine introduced this concept beautifully. He showed to the young scientists who should be the first author, who should be an author, who shouldn't be an author, who should be acknowledged. He warned them, and they discussed the issue of ghost authors that so many of them face in their research. And it was a pretty interactive session. People learned a lot from it. It was followed by a lecture by Professor Yildiz Zainuddin about the ethics of research on human subjects. She showed us all the laws that's implementing now in Egypt and in different countries regarding research on human subjects. She introduced the subject beautifully to the young scientists. It was followed by another session about the plague of research that we are facing when scientists behave badly, the fabrications, the falsifications, the plagiarism, and scientists unfortunately sometimes do behave badly. And it's good to promote the awareness about this misconduct in research for those young scientists. And this was done in a great deal in this session. This session was followed by another important issue that not many young scientists know about, the issue of research with dual-use potential. I can remind you with like a famous movie for Matt Damon and Kate Winslet, The Contagion, as far as I remember. This movie was an illustration of this important issue of research with dual-use potential. Dr. Tariq Al-Arabi and Ms. Yusra Subih here introduced the topic and discussed the ethical challenges that faces the research with dual-use potential. The participants expressed their ideas in terms of walking in the shoes of media, public, government, or researchers, all different people who are coming or who are involved in such kind of research. They got to know the pros and the cons of this research, how to keep it under control, not to get in something nasty that nobody wants to see. The most important session for the first day was the round table, where those young scientists get the chance to network, to express themselves, to share their experiences about all of the issues that was discussed. We had a very successful round table at the last thing of the first day. The second day of BioVision Next started with a conference on bioethical issues, was introduced by Professor Muhammad Hamdan again. He discussed the issue of freedom of science and research and how this can improve the lives of millions and can help us scientists to increase the life expectancy and solve the challenging problems the world is facing. He also discussed how the decisions on ethical issues in medicine should be made and what protocols that has been followed. And he walked us through the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights and how this can help in saving the human dignity if this declaration is implemented by all the countries that signed it. The last session of the conference was researchers' social responsibility and intellectual property rights. We had three wonderful speakers. The first one of them was Mr. Ihsan Masoud, the editor-in-chief of Science and Policy. He spoke about innovation and global challenges in the era we're living and how researchers can help business and the economy to grow. And he answered many of the challenging questions that we are facing now. But the best or the most important part of his talk was how young scientists can get funded, how they can connect with the major international funders, how they know what they want, what they not want, how they can benefit from the experience of people who didn't make it. And he introduced some very beneficial strategies that I'm sure every young scientist who attended the conference would benefit from in his career. This was followed by an interesting talk by a wonderful librarian, Peggy Pritchard, a friend of the Library of Alexandria. She introduced or trying to revive the old tradition of Library of Alexandria, and she introduced the topic of open access and how researchers in developing countries can benefit from open access and how can they evaluate the different open access venues that we have, how they can not fall in the unethical practices of predatory publishers that we are stormed with every day in our emails. The last talk of the conference was about leveraging the intellectual property for technology transfer, lessons learned from WIPO research and WIPO Green by Meganna Sharafuddin, the project officer in WIPO of the United Nations. She discussed the practical aspects of leveraging the intellectual property for technology transfer in the field of health and the climate change. She introduced to us one of the entities, the WIPO research, that's channeling all the efforts in fighting the neglected diseases that we know that there is no enough fund for fighting those neglected diseases because they are not prevalent in the developed countries. So WIPO is trying to gather all these efforts and provide big support to fight these neglected diseases like malaria and the tuberculosis. She also introduced to us the WIPO Green, which I found it magnificent. That's about all the sustainable technology transfer, especially in the developing country. I would say at the end we had a very successful meeting thanks to young scientists, thanks to TWAS and Library of Alexandria and all the wonderful people who came to make it possible. And thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Actually, all of us are having the red ribbon or a blue ribbon, right? If you find someone with a yellow ribbon, he would be a young scientist. Who is having a yellow ribbon? Stand up, please. Who else? Who else? Stand up, please. Stand up. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Now we will have something about you, the participants and speakers and guests. And this will be the BioVision Alexandria Conference at a glance. It will be presented by Marwa Al-Wakil, the Deputy Director, CSSP, Center for Special Studies and Programs, the Library of Alexandria. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Marwa Al-Wakil.
I'll just give you a quick view of our 8th edition of BioVision Alexandria. Our theme was New Life Sciences, the Road Ahead. We had 30 sessions where we addressed 3 main themes for the first time: biomedical sciences and engineering, food, nutrition, and well-being, current practice, and future insights. Both Stream A and B had almost 30 speakers, while Stream C had 39 speakers. We had 4 keynote speeches, 1 Nobel session, 22 stream panels, 2 roundtable discussions, and 1 plenary session. We covered a breadth of topics from genomics to food security to toxicology, translational medicine, robotics, bioethics, microbiome, and last, technology transfer. We had it all here at the BioVision. We were pleased to have 121 speakers coming from the 4 corners of the globe to share their wisdom, their knowledge, and experiences with us all, versus 94 in 2014. Of course, 70% male versus 30% female, but actually this is the largest female representation of speakers in this edition in the history of BioVision Alexandria. Coming from 29 countries. Then we move on to our participants. We had 1,800 participants among us. Of course, they are paid participants, but the ones attending are much less than that. 73% students and 25% academia and 2% representing other sectors other than these 2. 90% national and 2% international. And as usual, females are prevailing, so we have a 67% of females and 33% males in participation. Alongside the BioVision Alexandria, we had a poster session for young researchers to present their work and research, where we had 41 researchers covering health, food and agriculture, and environment. 44% were for health, 49% for food and agriculture, and a smaller percentage for the environment. I wish to thank our partners, sponsors, exhibitors, and supporters for their support. where we had a total of 26 partners, sponsors, and exhibitors. 57% international versus 43% national in our partners and sponsors. We had another side event called the BioFair, or an exhibition going on during BioVision, where we had 22 exhibitors. 45% of them were international and 55% were national. Finally, I would like to thank you all for coming. That's first. I would like to thank our volunteers, my BA colleagues, Dr. Mohammed Faham for his support. A special thank you to our sector head, Dr. Azza Al-Khouli, for her support. And finally, Dr. Sirajuddin for his leadership, mentorship, and guidance over the years. Thank you so much.
As you know, the BioVision Alexandria is about 14 years old now. So we will have like a less than 14 minutes movie for you, because 14 years ago, maybe some of you were just 10 years old. All women were 10 years old, of course. Just, talking about men now. So let us enjoy a 14 minutes, less than 14 minutes movie before we move to the closing talk. Please.
BioVision Alexandria, BVA, is an international event organized by the Bibliotheca Alexandrina every even year. BioVision Alexandria is an important gathering that brings together distinguished speakers and Nobel Laureates from the four corners of the globe through rich discussions that commemorate science and the finest achievements of the human intellect. It includes representatives of the greatest minds in the realms of industry, science, policymaking, media, and civil society. The ultimate goal is to provide a platform for exchange of information and dialogue, so as to explore the different ways in which life sciences can help meet the challenges facing us in the 21st century. A vital step for global economic development to improve the quality of life for all. BioVision Alexandria aims to increase the participation of developing countries in this important global dialogue. As the Bibliotheca Alexandrina is a key player in building bridges and fostering dialogue, BioVision Alexandria presents a unique opportunity for North-South collaboration by bringing in new scientific knowledge to the South. The conference focuses on three major themes: health, food and agriculture, and environment. It features a special exhibition titled BioFair at BioVision Alexandria. The BioFair offers a unique platform for top technology, agricultural, environmental, pharmaceutical, and publishing companies to connect main research and business development executives. It also features a poster session for young researchers and scientists. The initiative started in 2004, where it witnessed the birth of new ideas, initiatives, and partnerships under the theme New Life Sciences, Ethics, Patents, and the Poor. While in 2006, preliminary results of these ideas were presented, and new initiatives were launched under the theme New Life Sciences, Changing Lives. In 2008, the theme was New Life Sciences from Promises to Practice, where we focused on the effective translation of the best knowledge available into new approaches. In 2010, the conference explored the new frontiers and new areas of life sciences that could help solve the world's most pressing issues through New Life Sciences Future Prospects. While in 2012, we addressed the role science can play in achieving a fair, equal and just society through New Life Sciences linking science to society.
Becoming clearer and clearer to me that really the environment is about economic and social rights. Because at the end of the day, it boils down to how we, as a group of people inhabiting certain geographic boundaries, are going to share the resources this country has, and how we're going to price them, and how we're going to use them, what we're going to leave behind for the next generation.
We believe that international cooperation in science and innovation, one of the strategic objectives of the European Union, is absolutely essential in the quest for better science, better application of knowledge, and above all, and allied to political will, better socio-economic conditions for people everywhere.
And because Einstein was only 26 and Jim Watson in discovering the double helix was only 25, and Dirac was only 24 when he did quantum mechanics, and all of these people, you have to tolerate engagement with the youngest of your students because you don't know where the next Einstein will come from.
In 2014, under the theme New Life Sciences the Next Decade, we took a journey into the next decade, exploring new scientific frontiers and conversing fundamental changes in life sciences, as well as next-generation technologies, all needed to face our global hurdles and threats.
المكتبة بتعمل دور عظيم فيها زي اللي عملناه كده في اللغة العربية، زي ما شفتوا التشكيل والحاجات دي كله بقدرات وولاد وبنات من الشبيبة بتوع المكتبة الإسكندرية. معنى ذلك إن أنت هنا عندك فرصة إن أنت تقول للناس هنا في الموقع ده اللي إحنا فيه، ده مركز لإشعاع الحضارة العلمية والمعرفية للعالم كله.
The good news is that finally we have realized we have problems. So that's the first step to try and think about solutions. Some of these huge problems can be solved by simply changing our approach to teaching and education. By realizing that we do not have the luxury of tackling those problems in the regular, traditional ways we've always tackled them in. We really have to think outside the box.
For me, the core of the matter is equitable access. Because the science, as Thomas reminded us, is of no use if it doesn't reach those that it can help. And for this, you need to develop national and international policies that not only are appropriate, but that would be coherent. You need the bridge between those different levels.
Good health is just an incomplete diagnosis. We all will need to benefit from high-quality medical care at some point in the future. So we need to create a society where that is available and provided in a way that we can afford it. Now, the advances in genomics are creating those opportunities. But my message to you is, in order to realize those opportunities, you have to seize the day, carpe diem.
It's not just about food, it's about nutrition. The body is looking for nutrition. And even though calories are important, but recently there's a complete shift to food and nutrition in terms of thinking not only about food, but food and nutritional security.
Norma had a career-long commitment to the exploitation of cutting-edge techniques for crop improvement.
That sustainable agriculture can feed the world. This is one fact, and it needs to be researched how. I believe that sustainable agriculture can feed the world from the quantity side. It can feed the world better from the quality side, which would contribute to the health situation in the world. And it will get cheaper than conventional agriculture.
World water demand is projected to grow by 55% by 2050. The blue there, as you would expect, is irrigation. The red on top is power and electricity, because you've seen how people's demands for power is very, very, very strong.
Water is affecting 30% of the Millennium Development Goals. So if you solve water problems, then you reach it directly 30% or 1/3 of the Millennium Development Goals, because water is related to most of the diseases in African countries.
And I will again go to close my statement with a poem from one of the great poets of the East, actually the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize, with Tagore. And he gives us his vision of the future, and I think it is valid for us, not just in Egypt, but for everywhere in the world. And he talks about what sort of a country he wants, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Thank you, and Godspeed.
Continues. Looking forward to meeting you again at BioVision Alexandria 2018.
This movie is homemade. It was done by our studio department, media department. So you could, it's fresh, right? It's just homemade. Okay, now I have a very difficult task as every time, which is introducing someone who doesn't doesn't need actually an introduction. Because if I have to introduce him properly, I might need just maybe 1 hour to recite all what he has accomplished so far. So I'm gonna use just one word. Join me to welcome the biovisionary, Dr. Ismail Sirajuddin.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, but actually, after that magnificent film, I should, and the quotation from Tagore, I think I should end on a high note rather than risk finding myself unable to match the eloquence of the great Nobel Laureate in literature. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have come once more to the end of our great biennial gathering in the name of science generally and of the biological sciences more particularly. Of course, I don't have to summarize anything. You've just heard it by the rapporteurs. So a word of thanks to the rapporteurs. But I would also like to extend at this beginning, and please no applause until I list some of the people that I believe deserve some recognition. A word of thanks after the rapporteurs to the volunteers, to the CSSP staff, to all the BA staff. And in particular, I would like to thank the BA Steering and Scientific Committee, Dr. Adil Biltagi, Dr. Magdi Madkour, Dr. Muhammad Al-Sheikhi, Rafiq Nakhla, Salah Saliman, and Yahya Halim Zaki. And the staff who worked so hard under the direction of Muhammad and Marwa, and specifically the CSSP staff, Ihab Gaber, Iman Gamal, Isra Ragab, Hibak Gamal, Isra Al-Fayoumi, Mai Ali, Marwa Abdel Rasoul, Nathalie Romain, Rania Khoura, and Yusra Subeh. And these, of course, all have performed so magnificently, as well, I think, as all the BA staff, under the incomparable leadership of both Muhammad Al-Faham and the one and only Marwa Al-Wakil. So please give them a vote of thanks. And from the BA, I would like to extend special thanks to you, our visitors, who have traveled long distances to join us here in Alexandria, coming from the four corners of the globe. Thanks to the participants who have made this event what it is, and perhaps above all, a special thanks to the youth, the Egyptian youth, who are here today in these vast numbers, for it is for you that we do all that we do. We are here to serve you and to help you make your dreams come true. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams, so thank you, each and every one. Now, let me turn to a few reflections. As I said, I will not summarize the past. We looked at the road to the future, but I would like to reflect a little bit of this and share with you these reflections. At this closing, we have to recognize that we are on the cusp of the rapid transformation of the entire system of global research and the analytic tools that underpin it. From big data analytics to visual representations, from artificial intelligence to deep logic programs, from the new super technologies to the incredibly fast-growing digital availability and social connectivity that is now possible, an incredibly fast expansion of possibilities, of market penetration, of technology adoption around the world. Indeed, a new world is being born before our eyes. I have spoken in my opening address of the convergence between biology, informatics, and nanotechnology. Domains that are converging, that are creating a very rich mix where the world of the future is being invented and discovered. And two particular things create the context in which this is possible. The first of these is, of course, the informatics revolution, which, after all, it would be impossible to imagine the new biology without fast computers. No human being could write down 3 billion letters and then another line of 3 billion letters and compare them each and then find one distinction, a single nucleotide polymorphism, a SNP as we would call it. So you need computers. Without computers, we wouldn't be able to do that. And now computers are opening up new possibilities for us all. Big data. It came to the forefront when we discovered that the US National Security Agency had been actually tapping all the phones of the world and being able to track individual phones like the mobile phone of Mrs. Angela Merkel or Dilma Rousseff. So that is something. And we know that this is continuing and that the new science is going to produce an enormous stream of data. Just imagine the kilometer square array with these radio telescopes in Australia and South Africa will produce 1 exabyte of data a day. every single day. That's just enormous. That's about as much as the whole world was putting on the internet every day in 2014. Just to imagine how vast that information is. In 2007, that's less than 10 years ago, researchers at the University of Southern California estimated the entire sum of recorded human knowledge of everything from the most valuable legacies of the past to the trivial nonsense of receipts from a local restaurant today. Everything was 256 exabytes. That's enormous. How much is an exabyte? Well, I could tell you it's a billion bytes, but that doesn't help. To put it in perspective, what is being produced today, per day, from science and even more from other people now, is more than 1 exabyte, and 1 exabyte is equal to take the entire Library of Congress and digitize all the text in it, and 1 exabyte is more than 100,000 times bigger than the entire Library of Congress, and that's every day. So we are in a new world, new givens. Not only that, but we also have fantastic connectivity. Everything around the world is connected. What happens in Brazil is known in India, is known in Egypt, is known simultaneously. We connect with each other at the speed of light, by emails, and by WhatsApp, and by other tools. And some of my friends, like Ron Laporte, can actually write at the speed of light as well. So anyway, we'll see. I get 10 emails a day from him. But the main thing is the vast expansion of connectivity. So not only do you have these blocks and these enormous amounts of stores of data that we never imagined before, and more are being produced every moment, but actually we are connected in ways that we were never possible to think of. And what's more, that is nothing compared to what is already happening before our eyes. In fact, there's a huge spread of sensor networks that have the capacity of extending the human nervous system beyond anything that we have experienced before. Some of that was discussed in the biorobotics session, but other things we know, the Internet of Things is beginning to happen before us. Cars can zoom through toll gates, talking to the toll gate immediately, but the cars will soon, as we were told, be driverless, that we will have no drivers. So it's this enormous expansion of data and connectivity that creates a totally new world, and the science, the practice of science in that new world is also changing very rapidly. Now, it's amazing to reflect on that, but it's not just in the science, because already about 75% in the advanced countries, and I think certainly more than 2/3, possibly as much as 70 or 72% of global scientific research is being done by the private sector. And they are transforming the world before our eyes. As somebody said, reflect for a moment. Uber is the biggest taxi company in the world, and it doesn't own a single taxi. That Airbnb is the biggest hotel company in the world, and it doesn't own a single hotel. It's all done in the virtual realm through connectivity, instantaneous data, GIS, and a smart business model that takes advantage of the new technology. Now, for many, this deluge of data and this new world that is forming before our eyes is a cause for alarm and generates vision of future dystopias and dehumanized societies, from the Terminator movies to Gattaca to other things of that nature. But they echo profound questions which were already raised and posed by somebody like T.S. Eliot a century ago, when he asked, where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge we have lost in information? Valid questions, no doubt. But I find these developments, personally, I find them exhilarating. They open new vistas that younger people take for granted. I have to tell you a funny story. My grandchildren who are about 13 and 16 now, were talking to me about my youth when I was their age. And they were stunned when I said, we didn't have television. There was no television. What do you mean, no television? No internet, maybe, but no television? I said, yes, no television. They looked at me as if the next thing I was going to say is that we had a dinosaur in the backyard. But it is true. These kids, of course, cannot imagine a world without the internet. And many of the young scientists today cannot imagine the conditions under which their elders worked and struggled to get things done. So it is really amazing where we are going, the speed at which we are going. And I'm delighted, and therefore I invite all managers of cultural institutions to bring aboard the young, not as trainees and interns, but as colleagues and collaborators. That movie captured one of my sentences, you don't know where the next Einstein is coming from, and that's very true. But the other thing that we have right now, which is happening, and which you saw a little bit of it in biorobotics, and that's why we will be coming back to that on a yearly basis in biorobotics, is the relationship between man and machine. It is not an either or, it's a collaboration, whether we like it or not. None of us can do any research today without access to a computer. There is no way of searching the available data to know who wrote what, about what, where, without using a computer. So you cannot search, find, retrieve, much less develop, analyze, and add to the body of knowledge without going through the mediation of a machine. That was not the case in the past. The vision of a Newton or an Einstein sitting there writing alone with a pencil and paper some fantastic new equations is not going to happen without machines at some point. And what about the machines? And the collaboration, I think, will lead to new advances in knowledge. Already, just reflect on that, 20 years ago, it's already 20 years, IBM's Big Blue defeated Garry Kasparov at chess. The world champion of chess was defeated by a computer program. And last month, Google's artificial intelligence Go-playing computer system defeated the Korean grandmaster Lee Sedol, finishing the best-of-5 series with 4 wins to 1. And that's a very complex game, 2,500-year-old. It's considered exponentially more complex than chess, and that requires intuition, and therefore the gap of 20 years maybe is explained by that. But over the last 25 years, machines have beaten humans, the best of humans, checkers, chess, Othello, even on Knowledge and Jeopardy, as IBM's Watson did. Now, these events are even more compelling when we know that the programs that can do that are not just being put there to show off against some chess champion or Go champion, they're being used for actual applications into the real world. And in fact, AlphaGo, which just defeated the Korean champion, a Google program, is being applied for applications. So from the world of informatics, we have a huge revolution. And from the nanotechnology world, we have not only the use of targeted interventions to kill cancer cells and so much more, we also have totally new possibilities evolving from the invention of new materials. Getting graphene, for example, a form of carbon in a planar sheet that is only 1 atom thick, and with the atoms arranged in honeycomb-shaped lattice. And these, therefore, will enable us, for example, to have transparent sheets that are still photovoltaic cells at the same time, many other things. And not to mention also from graphene, we get buckyballs, carbon rods that are 100 times stronger than steel. All of these with the enormous new possibilities of new applications. And from the biological world, well, we get the new and revolutionary new biology about which we've been speaking a lot, and which I introduced at the opening address by referring to the gene editing. And we get ever more insights into this complex biological world, from the developments of the new synthetic biology to the better understanding of the functions and malfunctions of that most amazing thing we know, which is the human brain. Now allow me, because we are in Egypt, to do a slight historical detour. For all our guests, I think you will find totally new knowledge in what I'm about to say, and dare I say, even among many Egyptians who may not know enough about their ancient history. Egypt is a land as old as time itself. More pertinently for this audience, it is the land where medicine was invented, and in particular, where the brain was first discovered, named, described, and studied. Now, here in Egypt, we have a different time scale, so you really have to reflect for a moment. King Narmer, who unified Egypt 5,100 years ago, Mina, combined the north and southern states, and there's a stela that you can visit in the museum in Cairo that shows this record. And since that time, 5,100 years ago, Egypt, approximately with the same boundaries we now have, slight variations on the west, slight variations on the south, roughly that 1,000,000 square kilometers, with the tiny, tiny Nile Valley where everybody lived, and including Sinai, has remained the land of Egypt, governed by a central government, and the people of Egypt identified as Egyptians. There's no other society in the world that has this depth of continuity, none. China was unified a mere, if I may say so, 200 years before our era, so 2,200 years. Emperor Qin combined China and built the Great Wall. The Mesopotamia is as old as Egypt, but it was never a single empire, and there were vast empires that changed. But this continuity has created the land of Egypt. And not only that, just to give you another sense of perspective, if Alexander the Great represents the peak of the grand antiquity in European history, when Alexander came here to Egypt, the distance in time, not between him and King Narmer who unified Egypt, but between him and the much subsequent pyramid builders, was still greater than the distance in time between Alexander and us. That gives you a sense of the perspective. And from the mists of time, there emerges the majestic figure of the ancient Egyptian polymath, Imhotep, known for having been the architect engineer of the stepped pyramid of Saqqara, which preceded all the pyramids in Egypt, as the precursor of all the pyramids in Egypt before the building of the Great Pyramid. And he was also a medical doctor of great ability, and he was deified by the ancient Egyptians as the god of medicine. And that was probably the two things about that. One, there's a little statue that you can visit there in our museum, which I'm very proud of. Why am I proud of him? Because when I have friends like you visiting, I say, come and meet your father and mine. He is the first person in history, anywhere in the world, whose name has been recorded, not because of being a king or because of his bloodline or because of his conquest, but because of the product of his intellect. And the fact that the Egyptians deified him was the earliest example that is recorded that I know of. That's almost 5,000 years ago, 4,950 years ago, of a merit-based promotion. Now, ain't that great? A merit-based promotion 5,000 years ago. So Imhotep, who flourished almost 5,000 years ago, is considered to be the father of medicine. Why? He's the first person who said, disease is not just something you have to suffer. It is something we can deal with by observation and by scientific intervention, either by herbs, which he described, or by surgical interventions. And there's a medical treatise, the Edwin Smith Papyrus, which records all that. It has anatomical observation, diagnosis of ailments, recommendations for cures, all of which are based on empirical observations and devoid of magical interpretations. Science and medicine were born at that time. And Imhotep deservedly considered the father of medicine, and he went on to do more than that. He actually, we have through the Edwin Smith Papyrus and the Ebers Papyrus. I will not take you through all of that, but I wanted to say simply two other things that are so important. The empiricism that they were following is very important. They treated all diseases the same way. Edwin Smith is the oldest. The Ebers Papyrus has 700 remedies, a few magical formulas into it. But for example, even the Ebers Papyrus says, to treat asthma, here are some herbs. You put them on a brick, a heated brick, and allow the fumes to come out, and then the patient just breathes in these fumes. That's pretty good for something that's 4,000 years ago. And more important, they also looked at the brain, and they also recognized that disorders such as depression and dementia, not spiritual conditions, but are diseases to be treated by doctors. An incredibly modern viewpoint. And what did they do? They actually described the brain, and they gave it a name, and they described the observations about it. They did trepanation operations, and they described the meninges and the fluids and everything else in it today. And so we are proud to welcome you in Egypt today. Now, of course, that great tradition of ancient Egypt continued until the golden Greeks that we all admire so much, really dazzling us to this day with their science, their philosophy, their reflections, and so on, came about. And from there, they had their god of medicine, Asclepius, but they also had the great Hippocrates, from whom the Hippocratic Oath is still retained. But then when, as I said, Alexander came here, and he created Alexandria, and his followers, the Ptolemies, created the Library of Alexandria, and made Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world. They brought here the best minds in the world. And what did they do? At the great initiation of Demetrius of Phaleron, they brought the greatest minds in the world and then gave them nothing to do. It's an interesting observation. That was the recommendation of Demetrius, which you have to admit, 300 BC is pretty early to do that, but that's what the Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton did. They bring an Einstein and they say, please come, and when you come, do what you want. You want to read, you want to do research, you want to write, you want to teach, you want whatever, just be here. And they were sure enough that the cross-fertilization of having these greatest minds of the ancient world together would produce, as it did, an incredible fireworks of invention, innovation, understanding, science that still dazzles us to this day. And there they did something which is extremely important. It is to cross disciplines. The narrow silos that now exist did not exist at the time. The dialogue between the silos was very important. And we have heard from every one of our distinguished speakers that every research team requires multiple disciplines. So we have to find a way of bringing together all of these issues. Because the world in which we live is a world where we need this pluridisciplinarity. We can't afford the old silos anymore. We need the knowledge of the natural sciences, we need the insights of the social sciences, we need the wisdom of the humanities. And this knowledge is going to be developed by this pluridisciplinary way. Now, there are three ways of doing pluridisciplinarity. There's interdisciplinary approaches, which is kind of a team approach to organize intellectual inquiry into an evolving field. And the challenge cannot be easily addressed without the different distributed knowledge extremes being brought in together. The second form of this is multidisciplinarity. And this is where disciplines are joined without integration. So you take one topic and you analyze it, like, for example, let's take HIV/AIDS. Somebody looks at it as virology, another as epidemiology, another looks at social habits, the third one looks at costs, economics, and it's like different chapters brought between the covers of a book. And then there's transdisciplinarity, which is the case where a certain philosophy or conceptual construct dissolves boundaries between disciplines. For example, Marxist or feminist literary criticism is an example of a transdisciplinary move. I think the revolution we are living needs for us to forget these kinds of boundaries and just really bring people together from different disciplines to work on these problems. So back to us here in BioVision. We have brought people from all over the world, bridging both generations and disciplines. I'm very grateful to each of you. And as to the young people, some people think that they don't have much to contribute. In fact, some people look down on youth. And they say, look at them with their music and their impertinence to their elders, etc. So I give you this quotation. I see no hope for the future of our people if they are dependent on the frivolous youth of today. For certainly they are reckless beyond words, and when I was a boy, we were taught to be discreet and respectful of our elders. But the present youth think they are exceedingly wise and impatient of restraint. The world will collapse when finally they take charge. This was Hesiod, 700 BC. So you can see that the world has done pretty well. Some of us here are from my generation. We were the 1960s generation. And the 1960s, the rebellious youth and so on, and people wondered what will happen to these youngsters with the afro hairdos and the rebellious attitudes and so on. Well, many of them became CEOs of corporations, heads of banks, elected congressmen, etc., etc. It just goes on every generation there. So if I welcome the youth and I support them in the library, as you have seen, the staff of the library everywhere, I have something else to say to those who are not so young, including myself, including Dr. Muhammad Faham, including so many of my friends here. I say about us, who are not young anymore, for the years may wrinkle the skin, but to give up our ideals wrinkles the soul. The years may mark our face, diminish our physical vigor, whiten our hair or lose it, and limit our eyesight, but we can remain young at heart. For you are as young as your faith, as old as your doubt, as young as your dreams and as old as your cynicism, as young as your self-confidence, as old as your fear, as young as your hope, as old as your despair. And you will remain young as long as you believe in the beauty of your dreams, that you believe in hope, cheer, and courage. And if you give in to pessimism and lose your heart to cynicism, then and only then will you grow old. And then indeed, as Douglas MacArthur said, you just fade away. So for all of us, young in age or young at heart, let us confirm on this day of BioVision to continue the exciting journey that is the exploration of science. And we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and to know the place for the first time. So let us go forth and continue our work and make sure that the discoveries that result from that exploration increases the welfare of all, especially the poor and the destitute among the human family. Let us go forth and reach the unreached, serve the unserved, remember the forgotten, give hope to the forlorn, think of the unborn, and from this day forward, lay the foundations of better tomorrows. Thank you and farewell.